distribute that more widely. So the team that's running the community fund, and actually in fact the whole UK Shared Prosperity programme, so ours is the place delivery team, as I said, in Central Bedfordshire Council, and we're part of the Place and Communities Directorate. Our team's responsible for delivering the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and the Rural England Prosperity Fund. And we have majority of the team on the call with us this morning as well. So I will be handing over later to Lisa Seckham, who will take you through the details of the community fund. We also have on the call Alice Arden Barnett, who's part of the Place Delivery team and also supporting on delivering the scheme. Also want to sort of highlight Sarah Hughes and Laura Toms, who some of you may already know, who are in the community engagement team, and we've been working with them very closely on shaping this community fund, very much based on the successful community assets grant scheme that the community engagement team run, and they are on the call today as well. Also like to welcome David Brewer from the Community Voluntary Service. So the CBS are one of our partners supporting us to deliver the fund as well, and we'll be hearing from David a bit later as well. So on the sort of national perspective for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, this is obviously funded by the UK government. Nationally, there's 2.6 billion of funding for local investment by March 2025, with the 4 national aims of boosting productivity, pay, jobs and living standards, spreading opportunities and improving public services, restoring a sense of community, local pride and belonging, and empowering local leaders and communities. For Central Bedfordshire, that means that we have 4.6 million to deliver these national themes. I will jump to in the next slide, actually, there's the addition of the Rural England Prosperity Fund that's gone into this pot for 4.6 million. And the area we're particularly interested in today is the communities and place investment priority within the national fund, to deliver improvements to community infrastructure, etc., as you can see there. And back to sort of on the national basis, the Rural England Prosperity Fund. This is an additional fund and is aligned with the UK Shared Prosperity Core Fund, as we are referring to, but the same investment priorities of communities in place and supporting local businesses. Sorry, I keep getting pop-ups in the way of the slides. And we are making UK Shared Prosperity and the Rural England Fund available to communities through this community fund application process. A little note about the Rural Fund. So this is an additional 1.06 million to deliver those investment priorities within rural areas within Central Bedfordshire, and it's a DEFRA fund, and there is a link that we can share that shows which areas are designated as rural. In a nutshell, it's all of Central Bedfordshire, apart from Dunstable, Leighton Buzzard, and parts of Houghton Regis. But just to reinforce that the whole of Central Bedfordshire is eligible for the community fund that we're going to be going into next. So this does lead me on nicely to the community grant fund, which is what you're all here to hear about. It's part of the communities in place interventions how we're delivering the UK Shared Prosperity Fund within Central Bedfordshire. You can see that we're also delivering improvements to town centres, and we have sort of decarbonisation programmes as well that we're going to be delivering. But the community fund, the community grant fund we're talking about today, sits within the community and neighbourhood infrastructure projects intervention. So the all-important money for this fund, this is a capital fund, so for capital projects only. And for this financial year, the total pot is £260,589. And this is made up of more or less half from the core fund and about half from the rural fund. So we're running the Community Grant Fund, the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, in a similar way to the Community Asset Grant Fund that you may be familiar with. So this will be a competitive bidding process that we'll go into shortly. And please note, we are looking for quality applications for capital funding that demonstrate the benefits in the community, that will deliver the national scheme outcomes, and provide improved and more resilient neighbourhoods, communities and neighbourhood infrastructure. So I'm now going to hand over to Lisa, who will take you through the application process.
Good morning, everybody. As Beverly mentioned, my name is Lisa and I am the Place Programme Manager for the Place Delivery team, and I will be working directly on this fund. And I'm really looking forward this morning to sharing the application process with you all. So the first thing is, who can apply? So it's registered charities, voluntary community groups and the not-for-profit organisations with a constitution, parish and town councils, schools and parent associations, community interest companies, community benefit societies, faith organisations, social enterprises. And the main thing is you must have a UK bank account for your organisational group or project. So with the fund criteria, what I can't stress enough is if you go to Central Bedfordshire's UKSPF website, we've got a web landing page there. Please do read the guidance about this fund before you even start your application. It's really going to hold you in good stead. So everything you need to know, as mentioned, is set out in the guidance, but we are going to run through it today. So as mentioned on the previous slide, you must be a not-for-profit organisation. What I've sort of found this week and from the previous Meet the Funder session, a few businesses have said they've got charitable arms. So again, this is fine as long as it's a not-for-profit and you're going through the charitable aspect. We're welcoming grant applications between 5,000 and 40,000. As Beverly mentioned, it's for capital projects only, and I will give examples of what these are later on. Now, what we ask is for a minimum of 20% matched fund, and you will need to provide evidence of this. Now, we cannot fund projects that are already funded by DEFRA programmes, and again, there's more information about this in our guidance document. Your project must be completed and funds spent by the 31st of March 2024. This is due to government's instruction. So what can be funded? So it's capital funding can be used to purchase assets. So it could be refurbishment of existing assets that you've got, and this includes equipment. So equipment, such a wide scope. So it could be anything that's for the benefit of the community, and we'd like it to last, a good 5 years. So examples include, as mentioned, it's repairs, improvements to community buildings, including projects that you can improve. So it's energy efficiency, accessibility and safety of the building. Now, with any building projects, if you do need planning permission, please make sure that you have this in place because of the time frame. As touched upon, it's equipment. So we've really put a lot of detail here. So it's kits, nets, equipment, dance hall mirrors, musical instrument, books, and theatre curtains. So it's anything that's a tangible item. And of course, it's about the community outdoor aspect. So this could be community gardens, allotments, and enhancement of natural areas. So how to apply? So as mentioned, the application form is on the website, but please do read the guidance. Now, when you've downloaded the application form, do familiarise yourself with it. And what I find is really handy to answer areas about your project. Just go into Word so you can cut and paste when you do go into the actual physical document. Again, you would have read the guidance. But when you've finished your application form, it's not online. So please note you are downloading it. So you're going to be uploading it to an email. So the email address again is on the website and it's on the application form, but it is UKSPF@centralbedfordshire.gov.uk. Now, this bit's really important. We will physically be receiving your applications and we will send you an acknowledgement email. If you do not receive this email after sending your application in, please get in touch. So again, you have the email address, but just to make sure, because we will be emailing everybody that has sent one in. Now, at this point, your application will be checked. So it's going to be sense checked. So as I go on further into the presentation, there'll be a page which will explain why and what the areas are we're checking, just to make sure you meet that initial criteria. There's a 5-week window, which started on Tuesday of this week, for you to get your application forms in. And what we will be doing on the Monday of the week after the deadline, contacting anybody that hasn't met this criteria. So this could be things where you've not uploaded your insurance documents or bank statements or quotes, those sorts of things. And out of fairness, we'll be contacting everybody at the same point. So it won't be as you send your application in. So you won't hear about this until after the closing deadline. So again, just to sort of say, if your application doesn't meet the criteria, we will be in touch. However, I can't enforce enough. It must be in on the actual deadline, which is the 3rd of November at 10 AM, and there won't be any exemptions to this. And again, here's a link where you can find that information. So the application process. This is where good old technology, I can't see my notes. It's very small. So I'm just going to go to my sheet so I can read this. So as I mentioned about the criteria where we will do sort of the assessment to make sure that you've got the right criteria in. So sounds funny, but you've got to have a working email address. And this is to ensure that we can keep in contact with you and you with us. It's about making sure that you've attached your governance documents. So this could be memorandum and arts documents, things like that. Last year's financial accounts. So it's important you attach those. Copies of your match funding evidence. So again, this could be bank statements. And quotes for your project. Now, we like to see 3, but it may be something that your project's very unique and you can only get it from supplier XYZ. So again, tell us that. So it's important you explain that. And it's your insurance details. So we do lay out what insurance we would like you to have, and it's important you can evidence this. Again, I touched on before, if you're doing any building works, it's about making sure that you have the relevant planning permission in place pre-application. It's quite a short window for projects completed and for project spend on this round of funding. So it really makes sense to have that in place. And what we really like to see is any letters of support and endorsement of your project. So this could be stakeholder group sessions that you've had, letters that are commending your project, talking to your ward councillor, that sort of evidence, and of course your project plan. Now, what to expect from the application form? It has the standard stuff, which is all about you. So it's who you are, what your address is, postal codes, etc. So I won't spend too much time on that. You've all seen it if you've done an application before. What we really want to know is about your project. So this is your project description. Now, there isn't a word count on this. You'll be delighted to know. Tell us everything that you think we might want to know. Now, you know the ins and outs of your project. We don't. So it's really important that you detail this on this section here. So it's about the expenditure location. So what area of Central Bedfordshire patch it's going to be spent, because we can only fund projects that are within our boundaries. So all about the project costs and the finances. So what your overall project cost is, what grant fund you're requesting from us, and what your matched fund is. So it's important you tell us all of that. And again, attaching quotes for your project. So I've touched on that again. So as we found on the last Meet the Funder session, some people have said there's particular equipment you can only get from one source of supply, and that's fine, but it's really important you tell us that. So your project details. This fund is all about community benefit. It's about levelling up. So it's important that you tell us about this too. So it's the evidence of local need, community benefits, and you need to example this. So it could be that through footfall counters, through surveys, customer notes and letters. Partnership and collaboration. So this is something, it's not relevant to all projects. So it may be that you're rebuilding an outhouse or something like that. You're not going to be doing it in partnership because you're dealing direct with a builder. So again, make sure you detail this. However, some projects are done really with the community on side, and we really like to know about this and think about your volunteers, you know, who's working with you and doing things like that as well. It's really good to tell us about that and any stakeholder engagement. Your project objectives. So what do you want to achieve by doing what you're doing? So you know, but just make sure you detail this for us to see and make it as clear and concise as possible. And your project governance. So do you have a board? How often do you meet? It's really important you tell us about stuff like that. And this part here, which is the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and Rural England outcomes and how you'll monitor them. This part for us is really important. It's how we're able to get such funds from the government and distribute them to yourselves through community projects like this. In order for us to carry on doing this, it's really important we're able to answer questions that government ask. So things like this is in there, and it's telling us about how, you know, how it's improved, why it's improved, why more people are coming, how you can evidence this. We like to see before and after photographs as well. And a risk register. So lots of people haven't done one of these, and it's an everyday life tool, which is I'm going to do X, Y, Z. These are the things that potentially could go wrong. And what you need to do is look at your project like that. Think about the areas that potentially could be at risk of having issues and detail them down on our form. Now, you don't have to go into great detail, but just show us that you've thought about them and what you're going to do to mitigate if one of those do come to light. And this is where I'd like to sort of include David from CVS now. So David has vast experience of grant funding, which is why we wanted to work in partnership with David on this. So David, perhaps I could include you and ask you to sort of tell us about some top tips.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks very much, and good morning all. Delighted to be here working with Central Bedfordshire Council on this funding opportunity. Yeah, so moving away from the specifics of the grant itself, what I'll do is just spend a minute or two just giving you some advice on the application process more generally and some things that you might want to consider doing to improve your chances. I think the first thing I would say is preparation is key. So there's some general preparation you can do even before you start to consider your suitability for this specific opportunity. The general preparation might be to make sure all your governance is in place. I think colleagues from the council have referenced the importance of governance. So when they do their due diligence, they'll look at your constitution, for example, and they'll look to see that you've got the relevant policies in place. So just make sure that you've got your governance in place, you've got the right policies in place and signed off by your board or directors or trustees or whatever, or councillors. Yeah, so just make sure all that's in place. That's always a good starting point. In terms of the specific preparation you can do for applying for this opportunity, one thing I would really strongly recommend is that you read through from top to bottom the full application form and the associated guidance before you start writing your application. Read it all through carefully and get a strong sense of what you're being asked. I think at that point, you can then go away and construct your narrative, the things that you want to say in the application about your project, and then you can bring the two together. So actually look at your narrative and say, okay, that bit is best suited to go in response to that question, etc. So you've got a good match of what you want to say and what's being asked of you before you actually start to complete the form, so you know really what you need to say where. I think that sort of preparation is really helpful in my experience, and it stops you from doing the obvious, which is just to start from the top and just get it all out as soon as you can, and that often leads to an unbalanced application that doesn't actually answer specifically the questions that you're being asked at the right point. So preparation, I think, is key. I'll leave it there, hand back to Laura, but very happy to answer any more specific questions about maximising your chances to apply for grants through the chat, or indeed my I think my personal email address is going to be posted up later, so you can contact me if you need some help or support.
Lovely, thank you very much, David. Thank you. Okay, so hopefully you find that useful, and again, do ask away if you've got any questions on that all important application form. So government, as Beverly has mentioned, has released this funding through Levelling Up. So obviously they want things in return, which are the required outcomes, and it's essential that through you we meet these to enable us to require more funding further on, and to evidence the good that this fund has done. So we've touched on it before, which is an increase in the users of your facilities and amenities. So it's basically what you would do is have a look where you are today, how many people you've got coming, and if you are successful with your funding, again, looking at this and just looking at the difference that it's made and understanding that and reporting back on the monitoring. And it's also the people that report the improvements. So surveys are really useful here, and polls and those sorts of things. So they can be really, really good to do. And it's also about levelling up through promotion of equality. And this is the 9 protected characteristics. And we really like to see projects like this. So again, do include things like this and evidence it, because we will be asking you how you've measured the objectives that you've chosen. So the application timetable, and again, this information is in the guidance, so don't worry about writing it down today. And as Beverly mentioned, we will be sharing the slide pack with you. So the fund has opened. It opened this week at 10 o'clock on Tuesday. It's a 5-week window. So please note the fund closes promptly at 10 AM on Friday, the 3rd of November. There will not be any exclusions to this. So after the closing date, the following week, this was the assessment period that I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, where I should be looking to see if you've attached your quotes, your governance documents. You will be contacted on the 6th of November if any of these items are missing, and you will have that full week to get it into us by the 10th of November. Again, there won't be any exclusions to this. Just to make it clear as well, this isn't an addition to the application window. You have to have had your application in by Friday, the 3rd of November at 10 AM. So the all-important scoring and moderation is quite a long process. So that happens between the 13th of November right up until the 1st of December. And then we go into the decision-making process. And this goes right up to the Director of Place and Community and the LPG group. And then good news in the new year, hopefully, which is when the results to applicants comes out. So you will hear by the 12th of January. So do put this date into your diaries. You will hear from us either way. So if you're unsuccessful, you will also hear from us. And project delivery, as mentioned, it's quite a tight turnaround for this fund. So all funds and projects need to be completed by the 31st of March. What we had a question on the previous Meet the Funder was somebody had a larger building project. They were working on a smaller item within that project. So for example, if it was a large building build and it was a kitchen, it would only be the smaller part of the project that would need to be complete. So don't worry, it wouldn't have to be the whole of your project. And then payment of grant awards, this is all taken on an individual basis. So it's going to be as per project that's successful. So some people may need it up front, some in various groupings throughout that period. So it will be on how you need it. So that will be by the 31st of March. So how's it going to be scored? So it's, as mentioned, you're going to have the eligibility, can't say that word, the checks at the beginning. And so the evidence of meeting local need and community benefit is really important to us. So you're going to be scored on that, as well as the delivery of your fund and the outcomes. We will be scoring up to 10. And again, all of this information is in the guidance. So we would like to see evidence of partnerships and collaboration, but as mentioned, this isn't always necessary. So this is a lower scoring part of the application because it's either you are or you aren't. It's about giving us value for money. So supply your 3 quotes. Now, it's not always about going with the cheapest supplier. Sometimes you're better off going with a middle to dearer supplier because of the longevity of how long the item may last. So don't feel you have to go for the cheaper item. As long as you explain, put the rationale why you've chosen the quote that you have. And deliverability. So this is about filling in the template, including the risks, and we will be looking at this. If you are successful, the outcome, we're aiming to notify you all, as mentioned, by the 12th of January, and this will be via email. So as usual, if you're successful, you will be issued a grant agreement, and you'll find this is very standard in any grants. Has the typical conditions, which is the right for the council to recover any funding that's unspent or where your project's not been delivered. It's about whether your insurance is correct, the evidence of your spend. We also give you a toolkit which will help publicise the fact that where you've got the grant funding from, which is from the Levelling Up and UKSPF and Rural Prosperity Fund. And again, making sure you give us a working email address because it's really important we can keep in touch with you and you with us. And again, I've touched on this before, but it's agreeing a payment schedule. This will be unique to you and your project. And then, of course, monitoring requirements and evidence of the outcomes that you've selected. So again, you will be working with me and you will induct with me as well. So pre-getting your funds, we'll have a conversation, probably online or telephone or where possible face-to-face, and we can just look at your project, look at when you need your funding and look at how you can evidence your outcomes. So this again, we've touched on surveys. We do love to see photographs and any sort of narrative you can give us on that. This is the time that can lead into the media articles as well, because it's great if we can allow you to have publicity with your well-deserved projects. And it's about keeping in touch on progress. So you'd expect to hear from me on at least a monthly basis. So as David mentioned, there is lots of support available. And what we want to do is help you get the best application in that you can. We want you to make our job on scoring really difficult. So we want you to have quality applications. If you have any questions that are specific to the actual fund itself, please do get in touch with the team here, which is UKSPF at centralbedfordshire.gov.uk. If you would like advice on how to complete the application, now one of the things CVS can't do, they can't do your application for you, but they can certainly guide and help. and just make sure you've got all of those important details in. So again, that's info@cvsbeds.org.uk. And I know David's kindly offered to also put his personal CVS email for sharing, which I think Laura will do later on. Just so you know, we are hoping to have a further round of funding in 24-25. I've seen some questions to pop up to say that you haven't quite got your planning permission in place yet. So this could be more for those projects there, because spend does have to be made by the 31st of March 2024. But we will be confirming that in spring next year. So I'm going to hand back over to Beverly now with any questions that we weren't able to answer in the chat. And I just want to wish you all good luck and thank you for coming today.
Thanks very much, Lisa. Right, yeah, as you said, there's been some questions popping up in the chat. Is there any that we need to address, Laura? Please?
Yeah. Is there any turnover cap on those charities that can apply?
No, there's no turnover cap.
If we need planning permission for our project, we can't achieve that within the timescale for completing the application, as it takes between 8 to 12 weeks for this to be approved by CBC.
Yeah, do appreciate that these are challenging timescales, and the fund does come on the back of the Community Asset Grant programme that was promoted over the summer. So you know, we really are sort of targeting, I know, sort of live projects really at this point, but we do have funding for a similar scheme next financial year as well. And as Lisa said, we'll be releasing details around that in the spring. So, you know, those longer term projects where you need planning permission, etc., you'll have a chance to apply next year for those projects.
Along a similar vein, why only a 5-week application time frame? Why couldn't we have more time to prepare?
Again, I appreciate there are challenging turnaround times, but because the conditions of the fund, they need to be spent by the end of the financial year, you know, March 31st, 2024. So, you know, we want to turn the scoring around with as much time as possible for, you know, so then we can tell people, the successful people, as soon as possible, because it will be challenging to deliver some projects between sort of January and March. And so there will be another round next year, so please do bear that in mind.
Can you apply for more than one project?
It's one application per organisation.
And then there are a few more.
And can I just add in at that point, if you have previously applied for one of the community asset grants, you can still apply for this grant. It doesn't mean, although they're similar, they're not one and the same. So you can, if you've already applied for the community asset grant, doesn't matter if you were successful or unsuccessful, you can still apply for this grant.
If our projects also create people and skills outputs as well as community in place, is there scope to include these within the application?
I think the application form really focuses on those communities in place objectives, but you know, the more information you can put in, the more things that can achieve, then the better. We'll, you know, personally be scoring applications and reading everything through, so the more information you can input, the better.
Can the funding be spent on a summer 2024 project if the invoices were paid pre the 31st of March?
The work will have to, well, the project needs to be completed and paid by the end of March. So if it's a summer 2024, then, you know, perhaps look to the next round of funding for that one. Can you see that pop up? Sorry, it's just seen that question pop up that you can apply next year as well if you're successful this year.
Can you expand upon the match funding aspect you mentioned up to 20%?
Yes. So this could either be your own bank reserves. This could be if other funds. So it may be you've had, I don't know, big lottery or children in need, even the old community grant that we do ourselves. So as long as you can evidence that you have this, so it could be from another grant fund or your own bank reserves.
I don't think there are any other questions unless anyone has their hands up or wants to ask another question.
There was a hand up earlier, but oh, there we are. Is that Claire? Laura?
Yep, Claire.
Yes, hi. I was just going to, I suppose, take the opportunity for those on the call and just to stress about getting support, because it's, you know, it's well known that those that need the most support in our communities are going to be the ones that struggle with volunteers. They're going to struggle with a 4 to 5 week window, and there's going to be challenges around accessing 20% match funding if you come from an area that is more challenged. So just really kind of spreading that message about reaching out, and those links that you've got with the CVS, encourage groups to contact them, encourage any sporting and voluntary groups to contact Be Active. And I've put that in the chat because it's just a real opportunity to get investment where it is most needed, but often where it's most needed, people need the most support. And I think that we just need to kind of be as collaborative about that as possible.
Yes, great. Thank you very much. Yes, Claire, thank you.
There's one more in the chat. As a community asset is 1 per ward, can more than 1 from each ward be successful for UKSPF? I think that is.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we can. We're not restricted to the 1 per ward for the UKSPF fund.
Mm-hmm. This is more, what would we say, the value of the project. So this is all about the project, not where it's located.
Is there still a hand up?
Yep. Jill Ellis.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. We received a village hall improvement grant through ACRE. We applied in 2020 and received it in 2021. Does this exclude us from applying for this grant?
We'll perhaps have to take that one away and look into that. Jill, is that one of the DEFRA funds? Is the ACRE one of the DEFRA funds?
It was a village hall improvement grant, and I just know that one of your prerequisites is that you've not had any government money in the last 3 years. So I'm trying to establish whether or not that was government money, if it came through ACRE.
Yeah, I think there was a village hall one on the list. Sorry, Jill, we'll just have to check, because rather than tell you no, we'd rather be 100% on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. I don't think there are any more in the chat.
Great. Okay, well, so we'll leave it there. We will share the slides and the recording from this morning. Oh, another just question come in. Have I missed the community grants section? Sorry, who was it who just asked that question? The chat.
Catherine Brown.
Have you just joined? Is it Catherine? Is it more that you just joined? Yes, we've gone through all the application process, etc. But so we'll be sharing the slides, and all the information is on the Central Bedfordshire Council website as well. Drop us a line to UKSPF@centralbedfordshire.gov.uk for any other questions on the fund itself.
There's one more in the chat. If we've received any government funding, then we can't apply.
It's in the last 3 years. It's in the guidance. Is that right? So yes.
Yeah, I think in particular it's the DEFRA on the.
Is it just DEFRA? Yeah. Let's just we'll just clarify that as well.
It's the DEFRA programmes, but we just need to understand what other, for subsidy control reasons, we just need to understand where organisations have received funding, but I really don't think with the levels of grant we're talking about here, organisations will hit up to 300,000, which is what we need to understand for subsidy control. And this is detailed in the grant agreement, so we can add that to the FAQs, but I don't think we'll hit the levels for subsidy control here.
I don't think there's any more questions in the chat. Jill, is that a legacy hand?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, we'll be providing the link, won't we, to slides, etc. We'll circulate those, Mike. Thank you. Okay, well, shall we leave it there? So any further questions? There's the David's put his email address in the chat for any sort of help with applications, or it's the UKSPF at centralbedfordshire.gov.uk for any questions directly to the team. So thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.